it will be very visible and invisible outcomes that bring the light, the really value of the sacrifices made by Kenyans in pursuit of regional peace and security. And Madam Speaker, I am sure the committee of this House, and even this House, in their oversight role of Kenyan Defense Forces, when they visit our camps, they will have an opportunity to see plaques, memorial parks, with the names of those who lost their life in the line of duty, the honor they are given, not only in the mission in Somalia, but in other missions since KDF was formed. So that is a preserve of our bases, is a preserve of what the KDF Act and what the National Security Act within our Constitution subscribes. So in a nutshell, Madam Speaker, KDF and Kenyans have over the years suffered casualties, including loss of life, both before and after KDF integration into the African Union mission in Somalia, now the African Union Transmission Mission in Somalia, ATMIS. While the exact number of injuries and fatalities cannot be publicly disclosed due to security consideration, we assure the House that every incident is properly documented and families promptly informed. Number two, regarding compensation, Madam Speaker, the support and the welfare for the afflicted service personnel and their survivors. The government, through Kenya Defense Forces, is fully committed to ensure that both the injured personnel and their families who lose their loved ones are well taken care of. And the following are the various forms that are documented which can be found as a support policy and system in place to help the families who lose their loved ones or who are injured. Number one, we have a very robust compensation policy within KDF. And families who have lost their loved ones are entitled to compensation package that includes financial support, which is promptly disbursed within a week, within 2 weeks. And in this regard, Madam Speaker, Section 245, subsection 10 of the KDF Act, which Parliament in its wisdom enacted it in 2012, obligates the government and more so the Ministry of Defense and Kenya Defense Forces to compensate members of the Kenya Defense Forces who lose their lives or suffer disabilities while undertaking military duties or training. Therefore, the Defense Council in 2018 promulgated a policy framework through 2 Defense Forces standing instructions to prescribe both the general welfare structures and programs for service personnel and their dependents. That is that standing instructions number 1 of 2018. Number 2, there is a facilitative support to families, and pursuant to this Defense Council and the Defense Forces Standing Instructions, number 1 of 2018, there's a place for widows, orphans, and dependents, which focuses on how we can help the widows who are left behind, the dependents which are left behind, and service personnel living with a disability that they got it during either training or during combat. And this document provides a comprehensive policy framework that guides Kenya Defense Forces services and commanders on their responsibility in supporting the affected individuals. So it binds the KDF, it binds our commanders on their core responsibility to support the affected individuals and their families. Above all, we have a counseling and psychological support that we give. KDF offers comprehensive counseling and psychological support services to assist service personnel and families to cope with loss and grief, Additionally, KDF has established, Madam Speaker, a very comprehensive network of welfare centers, which are managed by trained social workers and counselors. Such centers, Madam Speaker, one of the best in the region, our wellness center, and if the committee and this House can visit, is one that we have at the Langata Barracks on your way to Ngong and Karen. If you go to Langata Barracks, we have a modern, one of the best facilities, and you'll find officers and servicemen and personnel who were injured either in training or within our country or outside our country during combat. We promote, Madam Speaker, restorative welfare program to support both serving and retired personnel along with their families. We develop psychological support programs for current and retired service personnel, their families, the families of the deceased personnel. We have a very robust team called the Veterans Department within Kenya Defense Forces. That even those who retired from the CDFs who retired to the lowest rank, we still have a very robust insurance policy. They are part and parcel of the KDF family. We ensure expedient delivery of terminal benefits and compensation to service personnel and their beneficiaries. And above all, we conduct what we call post-burial visits to monitor the state and the welfare of families of deceased service personnel. And finally, we coordinate social rehabilitation and for physically and mentally disabled service personnel among their responsibilities. Madam Speaker, our policies are continuously reviewed, they are updated to address any emerging needs to the families, and we ensure families receive the much needed support and care from internally grief nation. The second question, Madam Speaker, was what benefits and strategic advantage has Kenya accrued from her participation in AMISOM? And I think now AMISOM is moribund, so we just talk of what has Kenya achieved or accrued from our participation in ATMIS. Article 241, some Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Madam Speaker, establishes the Kenya Defense Forces with a subtitle 3, delineating the mandates as a defense force and the protection of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic of Kenya, but as well as protecting the citizens against land, air, and sea-based threats. And these are matters of paramount national security interest for the Ministry of Defense and the Kenya government. Therefore, Madam Speaker, our involvement in AMISOM and now ATMIS has been twofold. One is our commitment to national security. And if you look at the history, the journey, how we ended up in Somalia, primarily first why we ended up in Somalia was because our national security interest was threatened by Al-Shabaab and by other terror groups who have found heaven, who have found base within Somalia and the Horn of Africa. Therefore, our involvement now under ATMIS was primarily to protect our national security interests. And number two, we have a cardinal and moral responsibility to participate in regional peace, security, and stability. Madam Speaker, Kenya is an anchor state. Kenya is first among equals in this region. And we have a moral duty, we have a security duty, and we have an economic duty to protect even our economic interest, to participate and be a leader in the maintenance of regional peace, security, and stability. And to this end, a number of benefits and strategic advantage, both for Kenya and the broader Horn of Africa region, are highlighted and are the main reasons why we are there. Number one, we are primarily in Somalia to combat Al-Shabaab terror groups in order to stabilize Somalia and by extension to make sure our region is safe and secure. We have contributed to the reduction of terrorism infrastructure within our borders and in the region. But Speaker, the Kenya Defense Forces are part of our Africa Union and UN Security Council initiative in Somalia. The troop contributing countries, Madam Speaker, are Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Burundi, and Djibouti. And out of these 5 countries, Madam Speaker, it's only Ethiopia and Kenya who share border with Somalia. And we share over 800-kilometer stretch of unmanned border with Somalia. So, number one, our national security interest obligates us to stabilize Somalia so that the 700 borderline we have with Somalia can be safe and secure. Considering the insecurity and socio-economic challenges that has preceded Kenya's intervention in Somalia, it might be recalled that the tourism sector in the coastal region was dying while the passage of commerce through the Indian Ocean was heavily impacted by this. This is all what led us to Somalia in 2012, Madam Speaker. Tourism the incident that happened in Lamu. The port of Mombasa as a gateway to East Africa and a port that serves a number of countries. The ships that were docking in that region, the whole of the Western Indian Ocean, Madam Speaker, was affected by the Somali sea piracy that was going on. The incursion of Al-Shabaab into Kenya in radicalizing, recruiting, and arming them back to come and kill innocent citizens of our country is one of the reasons that impacted on the national security of our country and made us to go to Somalia. And secondly, with our troop contributing countries that I've mentioned, we are forced to participate in the peace and security and stability of Somalia and the Greater Horn of Africa. So, Madam Speaker, the Kenyan troops serving under ATMIS are in 2 sectors. They're in Sector 2 and they're in Sector 6. And Sector 2, Madam Speaker, with the operational base in a place called Duale in Lower Juba, our troops have taken deliberately that sector because that is a sector that borders the Republic of Kenya. And that is a sector that we created both inside and outside a buffer zone to make sure that there are no elements of terror and its affiliates that can cross to our country. And that's why, Madam Speaker, today we have a serious deployment in the Boni Enclave, in the Lamu area, because we want to protect our country and we want to protect the citizens and the economy. For us to achieve sustainable economic growth, security must be fixed, Madam Speaker. Number 2, Madam Speaker, our efforts in Somalia has fostered regional stability. A more stable and secure Somalia is critical for peace and for development in the East Africa region, the Horn of Africa, and beyond. Madam Speaker, if you look at from 2012, when AMISOM and ATMIS have taken over, today there's serious and critical semblance of a stable government in Somalia. Today we're seeing the Somali government have established and generated enough force. And today you see the president of Somalia at the forefront with the Somali National Forces combating terror. 5 years, 10 years ago, that was not the case. And I'm sure with AMISOM, with ATMIS, with our international partners, and with us securing our border, I think the days for Al-Shabaab in Somalia and in our region is coming to an end. I want to assure this House. I want to commit myself and do that assurance to this House. Madam Speaker, involvement in the Somali peace efforts have facilitated the delivery of humanitarian aid, hence alleviating the plight of thousands of Somalis, enabled many refugees and internally displaced people to return to their homes. Above all, there have been progress in the restoration of state institutions in Somalia. Madam Speaker, key UN agencies use our ports and they supply humanitarian assistance to Somalia. And one of the achievements of ATMIS and also Kenya Defense Forces was to open up the main supply routes, was to make sure that civilians, affected civilians within the Somali nation, access the UN and humanitarian assistance free of disruption by the terror group. On the diplomatic front, Madam Speaker, our participation has strengthened, has created a very strong diplomatic ties with our colleagues, the troop contributing countries, and Somalia and Somalia and all the other international partners for the first time. Madam Speaker, of course, KDF, by being part of a multinational force, and we did this in many, many countries, from Kosovo to Yugoslavia to Namibia to Rwanda to Somalia now. Our police are going to Haiti. This gives us more experience, more understanding, and create a better training and doctrine for our forces. Fostering peace and stability in Somalia, we are also contributing to the achievement of the regional and global development goals, including the African Union Agenda 2063, which aims to silence guns, a major challenge in the Horn of Africa, and the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Madam Chair, the last question was, are there plans for withdrawal of Kenyan troops from ATMIS? And if so, could the CS indicate the timeline? Madam Speaker, the decision, let me first make it, there are no Kenyan Defense Forces in Somalia. There are Kenyan Defense Forces serving under ATMIS through the African Union Peace and Security Council and with the approval of the United Nations Security Council. So the decision for Kenyan troops to exit from Somalia depends on several factors, including the progress of ATMIS mandate and the prevailing security and political conditions in Somalia. Our commitment, Madam Speaker, has always been towards the realization of peace, stability, and sustainable development in Somalia and in the whole region for the benefit of Kenya and the region. Madam Speaker, the ATMIS mandate is guided by African Union because I said Kenya Defense Forces, they serve under ATMIS. So this mandate is guided by two arms, the African Union and the United Nations Security Council resolutions, focusing with the primary objective of reducing the threat posed by Al-Shabaab and other armed groups, enabling the handing over of security responsibilities to the Somali security forces, and assisting them in creating a secure environment for the political process in Somalia at all levels to make meaningful achievement. But in the meantime, Madam Speaker, I want to report that under the guidance of the United Nations Security Council, currently there is an ongoing ATMIS drawdown strategy, which aims to gradually transfer security responsibilities to the Somali security forces under what is known as the Somalia Transition Plan. Kenya, alongside our other contributing partners and international colleagues, is actively, Madam Speaker, engaged in Somali security forces capacity building to ensure that there is a smooth transition. So already there is a phase out or a drawdown of troops beginning April last year, and that drawdown will end in December of 2024. The last troops are supposed to leave Somalia in 2024 as per the African Union and United Nations Security Council resolution and plan. Already phase 1 of the drawdown has been completed, where a total of 2,000 ATMIS forces have exited. And these 2,400 are from Kenya, 400 are from Uganda, 400 are from Ethiopia, 400 are from 600 are from Burundi, and 200, I think 150 is also from Djibouti, who are mainly in one of the sectors. So already 2,000 have exited, with Kenya drawing down 400, and this was completed in the month of June of this year. And what we did, Madam Speaker, for House to know, we were very strategic on which FOB to close, because we wanted to make sure that when we exit from that FOB, we didn't want Al-Shabaab to take that FOB the next. So we exited from an FOB, is 400 men and women, from an FOB which is across the border on the Wajir-Somalia border, and which, in our opinion, was about 7-kilometer distance from our base inside Kenya in Wajir. And I want to report today that 24/7 we monitor that FOB that we have closed as part of the drawdown to make sure Al-Shabaab do not occupy. We have told the Somalian security forces to occupy, but our interest is to make sure Al-Shabaab can never be our neighbors within 7 kilometers. Subsequently, Madam Speaker, phase 2 of the drawdown of the ATMIS forces, which KDF is part, was initially again planned for 30th of September of this year. And we are ready. We are supposed to withdraw 600 ourselves as KDF. However, this has been technically paused, awaiting the AU and the UN decision on a request made by the Somali federal government for a 3-month extension. And this extension is because currently the Somali government and Somali security forces have been engaging in a serious a war with Al-Shabaab in the central part of Somalia. And the Somali government have asked for a pause, that as we deal with these terrorists ourselves and our partners, let us pause. But that decision of the pause, Madam Speaker, and I want to make it very clear, for the 3-month extension, will only succeed and will only pause if the AU, who they have written to, and the UN Security Council give approval. So we are waiting for the approval. We support the decision of the Somali federal government, but that decision, Madam Speaker, to pause it lies with those two organs, the AU, Peace and Security Council, and the UN Security Council. And this, I think, is being considered. But notwithstanding, we, the troop contributing countries, are prepared to draw down the 3,000 troops, of which Kenya will draw down, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, not 600, we'll draw down around 754. 600 are our troops, but we have still other officers in different categories in the police who are serving under ATMIS. So if you add all of them, the number will be 754 Kenyan troops. Finally, Madam Speaker, phase 3 will commence on 1st of October 2023 through to June 2024, where a total of 4,000 troops will be drawn down. 4,000 Kenya Defense Forces troops will be drawn down. Phase 4 of the drawdown signifies the final exit and will take place 1st of July 2024 to 31st of December 2024. During this phase, all the remaining ATMIS troops, KDF ATMIS troops, and other troop contributing countries will exit Somalia as this plan. If there will be a change, Madam Speaker, because of several factors, then that decision does not lie with the government of Kenya, doesn't lie with anybody else. It lies with the AU Peace and Security Commission and lies with the UN Security Council. Madam Speaker, while we remain committed to fulfilling our obligation under ATMIS, any decision on the exit of Kenyan troops from Somalia will be made in consultation with the ATMIS partners, the African Union, and the UN, United Nations, the federal government of Somalia, And more importantly, and this is Madam Speaker, the important thing, with the due consideration for the Kenya national interest. Our exit from Somalia, Madam Speaker, and let me make it very clear to the House, we went there to protect our national security interests. Our exit will again depend on the interests, the national security interests of our country. Post-ATMIS withdrawal or post-ATMIS exit is critical. That discussion is critical for Kenya Defense Forces, for the government of President William Ruto, that if we feel now we have enough troops at the border, both the Kenya Defense Forces and other security agents, our many sectors, including our intelligence, are working around the corner. But we will discuss, we will analyze the post-ATMIS drawdown and withdraw, having in mind the national security interest of our country. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, the Minister of Defense assures this House that any decision made for KDF to exit from Somalia should be in the best interest of the Republic of Kenya in as far as our national security interest is concerned. Madam Speaker, that is what I have for this House. I am ready to engage the representative of the people in more other supplementary questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Cabinet Secretary, for that response. Honorable Senators, we have come to the conclusion of that official response, the formal response that has been done to Senate. We will now proceed on with the supplementary questions. And I'll first invite Senator Chute. Do you want to prosecute your two questions now? Or do you want to prosecute one now and the second one after all the senators?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will ask my first question now and the other one at the last of this session. Madam Speaker, let me first of all thank the CS for a comprehensive answer and well thought of. And Madam Speaker, the CS said we are sharing border with Somalia. The two countries are sharing borders with Somalia. One is Kenya, the other one is Ethiopia. Madam Speaker, we don't have Ethiopian Defense Force or army inside Somalia because they were very clever. It is very expensive for a neighboring country to go into Somalia because the borders we are sharing, the border we are sharing, the communities who live there are same communities, relatives, friends. And I would want to ask the CS, because he also comes from the same community, isn't it a good advice for Kenya to withdraw? I'm not talking about ATMIS. I'm talking about our Kenyan Defense Forces. Isn't it prudent for our defense forces to be guarding our border rather than being in Somalia? Because being in Somalia is creating problems for us, Madam Speaker. And as we speak, Mogadishu today is safer than places like Northeastern, Mandera, Garissa, Wajir, even Tana River. Madam Speaker, what would the CS, what advice would the CS give to the executive, the president, in order to withdraw our defense forces from Somalia back into our border? Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Cabinet Secretary, you can respond to that question before we move to the next. Technical team, clerk.
To correct this notion that Garissa, Lamu, Tana River, compared to Mogadishu, Mogadishu is safe. That statement is not true. As I came to this house this morning, in the last 24 hours, the incidents that happened in Mogadishu, and I really want the senator to be factual and honest to the numbers he's giving. So Mogadishu, in fact, the other regions of Somalia, in a number of areas where we occupy, including Kismayu and the whole of the southern part, are more safer. Our border now is more safer than Mogadishu. Number two, I have given a breakdown. We are not in Somalia. It's not the Kenya Defense Forces. And it's not the instruction of the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, His Excellency President William Ruto, direction that our troops are in Somalia. Our troops are part and parcel of the Africa Union Transmission Force. I have given the drawdown beginning June of this year, and the last soldier will leave, including Ethiopia and Uganda and Burundi. But let me speak for KDF. Our 4,000 plus will leave on 31st of December 2024. The gradual withdrawal will start in July. So it's not me to advise. And I said it is a function of the AU and the UN Security Council. The case is different, like our troops serving in DRC, which are there as part of the East Africa Regional Force, and with a mandate. Now they have a mandate of 3 months, ending in December. If December that mandate is not extended, and we fulfill that we have achieved, both in terms of regional security, peace and security of the Great Lakes region, we have achieved our economic interests in that part of the world, because Kenya is a huge economic bloc in DRC. Our banks are there. The port of Mombasa depends in that area. If we achieve our interests and the mandate is not extended, our troops will come back 1st of January from DRC. But these troops in Somalia are under the AU and UN structure. Two, Madam Speaker, let me also say it here. Our border is secured. From Kiunga to BP1 in Mandera, we have more than 18 forward operating bases. Our Air Force and we are building more camps now in Marsabit, your county. We are building more camps in Wajir. We have expanded the Wajir International Airport for more air surveillance, not only in our country, but in the region. Our Air Force, that is where they use. We have a 24/7 surveillance by our Navy on the Western Indian Ocean with Somalia. No ship carrying anything can enter, particularly the area we man, the sector that we man. And we man the sector, both the sea and the land and the air, that borders our country. The other sectors are manned by our colleague troop contributing countries. So, Madam Speaker, our exit I have given plan. And above all, we are also looking at, as we exit, how is the fourth generation, how is the capacity of the Somali security forces being built, which is better than maybe 15 or 20 years ago, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, CS. Senator Samson Chalalike. Remember, you ask only one question.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I want to thank Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale for appearing and answering questions. Mine will only be one. Just in addition, to ask the CS Aden Duale, Kenyan troops that are participating in United Nations /AU missions across the world, either wet or through dry lease, because he has indicated, sorry, whether the lease it is or whether dry or wet lease, Madam Speaker, is how much money has been reimbursed by United Nations stroke African Union to Kenya over the last 5 years. Madam Speaker, to answer that, including I've heard a mention about the United Nations Approval Security Council or participation of our ever courageous police officers in Haiti, whether Kenya Defense Forces will be part of it. I thank you, Madam Speaker, for that allowance.
CS Aden Duale.
Madam Speaker, thank you to the question to my Honorable Senator for Nandi. Yes, Kenya has participated in peacekeeping missions since time immemorial. And Madam Speaker, it's very sad. At one time, we were country number 4 in peacekeeping mission. Over the years, we are now at number 41. And that's why we have made a deliberate attempt, particularly under this administration, to make sure that we regain our position and do better. Because Rwanda, which was behind us, now is number 3, I think, in peacekeeping mission. So, and I really want to thank Parliament for the passage of the Peace Fund. The passage of the Peace Fund was very, very critical. It was passed 3 months ago, and now we are putting the implementation structure. How much we have received from ATMIS the last 5 years in terms of reimbursement? Roughly, we receive about 500 million every year. So in 5 years, it's like 2.5 billion Kenya shillings that we have received in the last 5 years. And this is part of why we brought the Peace Fund, so that the Peace Fund, unlike now, the money goes to the National Treasury. It doesn't come to the Ministry of Defense. But now we have made a deliberate attempt, passed through the cabinet. We want the Peace Fund to be domiciled at the Ministry of Defense. So that money, we will use it to modernize and to buy more equipment for our security forces without putting more pressure on the exchequer. Madam Speaker, thank you.
I believe you are satisfied by that response. Senator Boni Halwale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, allow me to congratulate the minister. He's one of the ministers who takes our calls and who calls us. Thank you, Minister. Minister, before I ask you my question, allow me to invite you to the provisions of Article 35 of the Constitution, specifically Article 1A, which gives every Kenyan the right of access to information in the custody of the government. Can you please balance this with our age-old tradition in Parliament, where you are free to ask the Speaker to allow you to table that information in camera? I want to invite you. Having done so, allow me to ask you my question. Haiti is 12,119 kilometers away. It takes 13 hours of flying to reach Haiti, and the cheapest flight, Minister, is 220,700 shillings. You have justified our presence in regional missions by attributing it for the need for us to be part of securing peace, security, and stability of our regions. Given the statistics I've given you on how far away Haiti is, could you tell us what are the benefits and what are the intended consequences the government hopes to achieve by taking our troops to Haiti?
Cabinet Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the last question, I think, with a lot of respect to my colleague, when I came to Parliament, I found him in this same chamber. There used to be a library next door. I don't know whether it's still there. Many, many years. I want to refer him the last question to the Minister of Interior. So please take time, invite Professor Kindiki, give him the statistics of the distance and how many flights go there and the hours. That is above it's not my domain, so I'll refer that to Professor Kindiki. And I'm sure the House has the powers using the standing orders to invite him, even this afternoon. Yes, the first one was, yes, Article 35 of the Constitution allows you to get and provide information, any information, to any citizens. But that article must be interpreted with certain responsibility. And I'm sure if you read the chapter on the organs of the National Security Council and even KDF, and you being a very, very seasoned medical doctor, I am sure even sometimes you don't provide your client, your patient, data to all and sundry. This is a plenary. And there are certain information which is, the custodian is the National Security Council. Honorable Boni, Senator Boni Khalwale, I cannot share. But if you want me to share, the venue will not even be Parliament. The venue will be the defense headquarters, because even the room where we want to share, we must take charge of that room. So I will invite you, using the standing orders, to come to defense headquarters. You'll be ushered in, and the generals will share with you some of the privileged data. I am sure from where you sit as a majority whip and as a seasoned leader in this country, you also want to protect our country and you want to protect the national security of our country. Thank you.
It is apparent that the responses being in the domain of security sector are unique and have different perspectives, Senator Boni Khalwale. I would also want to guide the senators that the questions that you raise, the supplementary questions that you raise, we had initially agreed that they should be connected to the questions that are before the floor of the House. And I am not blind to the fact that the questions on Haiti are matters of national importance and have raised concerns. Nonetheless, Senator Boni, you are guided to raise that question with the relevant ministry and give the statistics you have given very effectively this morning. Thank you. Senator Bogwa Mongai George.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And allow me also to congratulate the able CS for being a towering figure in the stability of our country. Mr. CS, during our visit to Turkana on Senate Mashinani, it occurred to us in our engagement with the security apparatus that the porous border of Uganda, South Sudan, and Ethiopia are guarded by the defense forces of those particular countries. But on the Kenyan side, it's not guarded. I would want you to tell this House why that is happening, as well as appraising this House the successes and challenges your docket has had in solving the problems of Lamu County. Thank you.
CS.
Madam Speaker, I agree. We are like, let me use the word devolving. We are devolving Kenya Defense Forces, both its bases from our historical positions. We now have 2 sites in West Pokot. We have 4 sites in Turkana. We are in Marsabit, in Mandera. So we are building more bases and more training bases, mainly along our border, so that as part of protecting the territorial integrity of our country. So I'm sure in the Lodwar airstrip, for the first time we have got an forward operating base by our Kenya Air Force. So Kenya Air Force are already in Turkana, in Lodwar town. We are building a big base now in Turkana, courtesy of, I really want to thank the former governor and the current governor of Turkana for availing the land. And we have another 3 bases in Turkana. Turkana is vast. And we are shifting, we have learned from the cattle rustling and banditry in North Rift that Tiati and Baringo and West Pokot and Turkana, we have enough land for even training. So we might even shift both the Kenya Defense Forces and even the police. We might shift our training bases closer to those terrain. I think they're good for training. I am sure, Madam Speaker, Lamu is now under operations. And I don't want to speak about Lamu in the plenary. If the Committee of Defense can invite me in camera, because Lamu now is under operations. So, and this question was, I was not ready for Lamu. But anyway, I told the chair of National Assembly Committee, if I want to speak about Lamu and our war with Al-Shabaab, I'll do it in camera.
Thank you, CS. Senator Abdul Haji.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before going straight to the question, I would like first of all to commend and congratulate the Cabinet Secretary of Defense for good work that he's done since his appointment. And I'm not only saying this because he comes from Garissa County and I happen to be senator, but it is very obvious that he's been doing a good job at the ministry, a very sensitive ministry at that. I also want to appreciate the answer that he has given the House, a very detailed answer. And I think, Honorable Madam Speaker, any officer who dies in the line of duty is one too many. And we have to, as a country, appreciate that the work they do is the ultimate sacrifice. If an officer dies in the line of duty, that is the ultimate sacrifice that they can give in fighting for this country. And they are our unsung heroes. And the ones that we have lost, may God rest their soul in peace. Madam Speaker, the Kenyan Army has been in Somalia for 5 years. And as the Cabinet Secretary has explained, that as they are at their second phase of withdrawing from Somalia, the federal government of Somalia has actually requested that they extend their time. So my question is to the Cabinet Secretary, in the period of the 5 years that the Kenyan Defense Forces has been in Somalia, have they undertaken any social development programs, programs within the military-civil engagement that has helped them to win the minds and hearts of the community in Somalia, in the areas that they are serving? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also want to confirm that I have one of the best senators. He is my senator, and myself and the people of Garissa have full confidence in Senator, who he replaced our father and our elder, who also sat in this house. May Allah take him to Jannah. Madam Speaker, yes, Senator Abdullah has asked a very fundamental question. We do it both in our country and we do it outside. If you go to our area and thank Parliament, Parliament always allocates a certain resource to Kenya Defense Forces for their civic duty. So we are involved in construction of dams, building of boreholes, providing medical camps, and wherever our bases are, during drought, they give a lot of water. Senator will agree with me, particularly in the parts in Garissa where there was drought and where our bases are, the same in other parts of the Asal region. So, and then we have an element we call key leadership engagement. The Senator and Deputy Majority Leader in the Senate, Senator for Samburu will agree with me. Even where we go and bring peace and security, we still have key leadership engagement. In Somalia, Madam Speaker, one of our operating base in a place called Duale, and you can look at either ATMIS Twitter handle or KDF, you will find in our biggest hospital, we provide maternal health care, we provide surgery, and even this week, if you go look at that Twitter, you'll find a lady who was now being discharged on a wheelchair who was in our hospital for about 3 months in Duale. So that is a kind of thing we do. We provide water, we provide health facilities. And I remember, Madam Speaker, I visited one of our forward operating bases in Wajir with members of parliament in our sensitization campaign to the community to help us in the war against Al-Shabaab and against terror. And the elders told us, and the base commander told us, to be more specific, that, you know, all our forces there are adult, and mainly they are men. So they said when the communities come to them with the pediatric cases of children who are sick or mothers who are pregnant, they don't have the drug. So we made a deliberate decision, policy now at Kenya Defense Forces, that wherever we have our doctors and our nurses in the most remote parts of the country and inside Somalia, we must make sure we provide all types of drugs, so that if we get a lactating mother, a pregnant lady, a lady who has complications in delivery, the drugs are available. So that is our duty. And everywhere we do, we don't only use kinetic force. We want to blend it with development, socio-economic development programs, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, CS. Senator Danson Mungatana.
Madam Speaker, every time I attend a funeral of one member of the Defense Forces in Tana River, there are very elaborate ceremonies that follow, and we thank the Ministry of Defense for what they do, because it is a reflection of the discipline and the arrangements that are there. The question I have for the Minister is, can he disclose the amount that they give to each member of the family? At least that one is not a matter of national importance or secret. He should tell us, apart from the flag, the salutes, the nice songs they sing, and all the ceremonies, what does the widow get? At least a figure. What does the widow get on that particular date? I know, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, that the armed forces regulations on gratuities, they have a calculations they make for personnel and officers. So when they give the death gratuities after calculation, so that may be something they do maybe over a period of time, which the minister should tell us. But when they come to bury, what do they give? That's the thing that we want to know. Because it's very sad, but we are always mesmerized by the ceremonies. And actually, at least in Tana River, so many of us go to see what is happening there because of what they do. But do they give? And we want to know from the minister the figure, so that Kenyans can know when your son or your husband or your daughter has gone on the date of the burial, something, and this is the amount that is given apart from the death gratuity. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Madam Speaker, this is not nothing to hide, so I'll just say what we give immediately within 30 days, for shorter than 30 days. If the officer is serving within our country, immediately he gets 4 million shillings. Above his pension, which has a component called death gratuity. But if he's serving in ATMIS, like in Somalia, apart from the 4 million, the AU and the UN give that family 50,000 USD. and the Honorable Senator, if there is anybody who you feel from Tana River County who did not receive this, I am ready and willing to engage you at the defense headquarters. But there is a problem. The problem is where families don't agree. And Madam Speaker, on a light touch, even in my life in Parliament here, there are colleagues of mine and Honorable Boni Khalwale and Honorable Mugatana, we served with them in the 10th Parliament, who died, and up to today, they cannot get their gratuity because of family disputes and courts, and people went. So just like here, even in defense, we get a few cases where because of the family dispute, the money becomes not accessible. But 4 million is within the first 3 weeks. If he's serving under ATMIS, Honorable Boni Khalwale, Madam Speaker, I want to urge him on a light note that by the time you go to heaven, don't leave us with a lot of problems. Make some good disclosure. We can work on, Madam Speaker. But we pay 4 million for within our country. But if outside our country, like ATMIS in Somalia, we pay 4 million, plus the AU and the UN pays 50,000 US dollars. And I agree with you. We give decent, respectable burials, particularly for KDF officers.
Thank you, Honorable CS. On the issue of family disputes, it appears like Senator Boni Khalwale has some leads towards those disputes. Though tempted, let me allow Senator Julius Mulgo to present the question. Otherwise, you'd have answered to that.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I'm glad I'm not like Khalwale, who has more than 3. I have only 1, and there's no dispute that will be there.
You have only 1 what?
Honorable CS, I'm very thankful for the elaborate explanations that you gave, and I agree with you totally. Because if we should defend this country effectively, we must engage the enemy from far, not allowing, even if you see how cheetah fights her enemies or his enemies, they lead the attacking enemy away from the cubs. They don't allow them to come near. So in defense of our country, we should engage the enemy from far. I have a question, however, from some of the visits you have made. You have assured the nation and the defense department that we will buy equipments that will detect the bombs and whatever these guys bury in the ground, so that as our military operatives move around and operate, they will be safer than it is now. Because you have done an effective work in keeping them away. But when it comes to these bombs and so on, they seem to still take the day. So how is that going to be? Or because I'm not a prophet, but we will be with these people along the border even after we move back from Somalia. We will still engage them at the border because these are evil-driven people, and they are connected with maybe the others in the world, the people that are terrorists. So we will still be with them. So how can you give us an assurance on that? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator, for West Pokot. I totally agree with you. And I want to inform the House that we have completely say destroyed the capability and the infrastructure of Al-Shabaab. Their only weapon of choice is the IEDs, and you have rightly said. And that's why you see in Lamu, in parts of northern Kenya, they come in, they walk in 2-3, put an IED, targeting our security forces, and sometimes our citizens suffer. I want to assure this House and the country that under the leadership of the President and our Commander-in-Chief, we have, both us and Interior, Ministry of Interior, the National Police Service, we have heavily invested through the support of the budget from Parliament in buying armored vehicle APCs that will protect our troops from the IEDs, and to make sure that using our intelligence, using other technology, we can easily find IEDs. In fact, now we can tell that there's an IED which has been planted on that road, particularly in the Lamu enclaves, and then we tell our officers, number one, not to move in vehicle, and number two, to go and detonate that IED. But by December, January, under the support of the Commander-in-Chief and this administration, we are investing heavily both in interior and defense to make sure that we have the right equipments and the right arms for our security forces, both inside and outside Somalia. Two things I want to assure this House, myself and Professor Kindiki. The North Rift and all other criminals and banditry, this is the government that will deal with. And yesterday the Cabinet has approved the shared national security strategy for North Rift, where now, apart from fighting the criminals, we want to invest in the socio-economic development of those regions. We want to build schools, we want to open up those areas, we want to build dams, we want to build security sector under the implementation of the National Security Council. So, and we will be there for the long haul. The problem with the successive government was that they were going there for 2 months. Leaders called the president, former president, they say, come out. No leader will ever call the Commander-in-Chief until, and now I'm sure the leaders are also very happy, about 85% of the North Rift now is pacified. We have only about 15%. Now we want to remove the kinetic operation and deal with socio-economic development of our people. They must be part and parcel of the Kenyan agenda. So we are investing heavily in the modernization of our security forces, from intelligence to the police, to the other special groups, and to the Kenya Defense Forces.
Thank you, CS. Honorable Jackson Madego, Senator Jackson Madego.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, first let me take this opportunity to thank the CS for appearing before this committee. I had comments in regard to CS Namwamba following the comments of Senator for Bungoma. But since Chair, you ruled, let me not speak to us. I would like to ask the CS for defense. In your response, CS, under counseling and psychological support, your response number 2, that one of you have centers that are tasked with developing psychological support programs for current and retired service personnel, their families, and families of deceased service personnel. Honorable CS, I would like to ask you, your officers that we lost in 2016, whether the people responsible have really visited to offer any support since then. I'll give you a case of Corporal Leonard Tata Damien, service number 73046, who was part of the officers that we lost in Somalia. The widow happens to be from my county. From 2016, she has not received a phone call, an SMS, or a visit. So I would like to know whether the person who is in charge is not sleeping on the job, or whether they are telling the CS they have visited and they have not visited. And for your information, CS, my county buried not less than 15 officers during that period of time. I've only given an example because I was able to get in touch of that. And as that is checked CS together with that, what happened with the boundary wall? Was it a wall or a drench at the boundary of Somalia? Is it complete? And how much did it cost?
Senator Madago, how many questions are you asking?
It's one question, but it looks like it has appendages.
Disaggregated into 6 different issues. Senator CS.
Madam Speaker, let me start with the last one. I think, Senator, you need to file a question to ask about the boundary wall. That boundary wall was not a boundary wall. It was a conduit for stealing public resources. And you cannot build 700 border with a wall. It can 700 kilometer border. So they did about 10, but that is one of the ills of the previous administration. So you have the oversight role, so you will ask, please. And you can call those they're still around, some of them. Ask them about the wall. But when I start building a wall, I'm ready to answer. Secondly, about, we are very sorry, and I really want to ask that not only in Somalia, since independence, and you'll find their names in a memorial park in all our camps, there are many men and women in uniform who sacrificed their life for our national security interests. But this particular officer, we condole with the family, and please, I want you to give me. You know, sometimes I have seen, I was asked a question on a pension claim by an officer, by the National Assembly, and when I came to answer and I gave all the evidence, the member realized that this member was cheating him, and he got his pension. So give us the name so that I can check with the head of our medical team and the other welfare team whether they have visited. If they have not visited, I will assure you in the next 2 weeks they will visit, and I'm very sorry if that was not done, but I want to check. So before I leave, maybe I'll get the name of the widow. I think we have a very robust, not only for the widows, even for our veterans who retired. We have a veterans which the houses of parliament have passed.
Thank you, CS. Senator Lelegwe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me join my colleagues to appreciate the presence and the response by the Cabinet Secretary. Madam Speaker, based on the response by the Cabinet Secretary, he has highlighted the high demand for the KDF in protecting our territorial integrity. Madam Speaker, I'll proceed to ask a supplementary question that is connected to the substantive question as asked by Senator Chute. Mr. CS, what is the reasoning behind the deploying of KDF to address the current insecurity within our borders, particularly the cattle rustling menace in our country, despite the reported lack of success in their efforts? Shouldn't there be a priority to focus to prioritize the focus on protecting our nation's integrity in Somalia, a service that is urgently needed in our nation than engaging within our borders for a business that can be dealt with other agencies of security in our country? Thank you.
CS.
Madam Speaker, I thought the good senator of Samburu will thank Kenya Defense Forces for bringing stability to the 6 counties of the North Rift, including Samburu. But having said that, we are in Samburu and North Rift, courtesy of a provision of law. And if you look at Article 241, sub-article 3C, it says, the Kenya Defense Forces may be deployed to restore peace in any part of Kenya affected by unrest or instability only with the approval of the National Assembly. That's one, which we are coming to it. But if you look at B, shall assist and cooperate, that is 3B, shall assist and cooperate with other authorities in situations of emergency or disaster and report to National Assembly whenever deployed in such a situation. Currently, we are in this North Rift region, courtesy of Article 241, 3B. If the situation requires and that we need now to go ourselves, then we'll come back to the National Assembly using 3B. But where are we in that area? You know that area, and I'm sure the senator, my great senator, comes from there. This was an area which was experienced cattle rustling and banditry since immemorial in President Kenyatta's government, President Moi's government, President Kibaki, and President Uhuru. And I think the time has come that we must allow the citizens of that region to be part and parcel of the Kenyan development agenda. Their children must go to school, their women must do business in all the trading centers, roads must be passable, criminals must be dealt with, and above all, those 4 counties must benefit from the budget and the national development of this country. And today I'm very happy to report that we have dealt with, we have silenced the guns, we are helping communities, and yesterday, under the direction of the President and the Commander-in-Chief, we have approved a CAB memo that myself and Professor Kindiki has initiated and which was passed by the National Security Council before coming to Cabinet to make sure that now as we dealt with the kinetic forces, now we bring socio-economic development. The people of those counties must get education, boarding schools, where all communities' children can go, build more dams, more boreholes, operationalize health centers, ask the Interior Ministry to create all the sub-counties and locations that are in areas where there's no government presence, open up about 13 to 14 security roads so people can move, and above all, establish permanent police and military camps and training camps to address the insecurity and make a very quick reaction. And some of those counties are also along our borders with South Sudan, with Ethiopia, with Uganda, and to make sure that we get less time, we protect our territorial integrity we share with other countries. But I'm sure, Governor, we have a meeting with the leadership of Samburu, Laikipia, and Baringo next week, so that we agree, we listen to the leaders. Now that we have silenced the gun, now the leaders can tell us what else we need to do. And from there, then we go to the ground, the way we did in other counties, and we talk to the people. Now we have reached the stage of engaging the leadership at strategic level. Leaders are very important, communities are very important to make sure that without them, even we can't fight the terror. Without them, we can't bring development. So we will engage you next week.
Thank you, CS. Majority Leader, Senator Aaron Cheriot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also want to join the rest of my colleagues in appreciating the Minister for first his appearance, and secondly, I also want to commend him for the grasp of issues in his ministry. Listening to the Minister, you would think he has served in the military before, though I suspect, Mr. Speaker, because I know him and I know his family well, I think these are tips that he gets from his lovely wife, who is a daughter of a general. So probably that's where he has gotten all these tips about the things that are happening in this sector. Madam Speaker, I had serious concerns about the issues that were happening in Lamu, but then I've had the Minister
has responded in a way that I am satisfied, because we are just 2 or 3 months shy of December by when he has promised us that they have made budgetary provisions for equipment that will help our military officers who are serving in Lamu County and many such areas, because it was increasingly troubling to see many of our soldiers die because of the activities of Al-Shabaab in that particular area. Just the last comment, Madam Speaker, is a softer one, and this is on behalf of Parliament. You know that Parliament, Madam Speaker, doesn't have many facilities, some of which we may want use of. Madam Speaker, Parliament and parliamentarians generally, and the Minister has served for many years as a parliamentarian, he knows that on many occasions we have to seek the assistance of other government agencies with regards to facilities where members can train and do other social support activities to help them with their work, and particularly preparation for the annual East African Legislative Assembly Games. And because of lack of stadiums, Nyayo Stadium remains unavailable, particularly for members of the football team. And we have tried to seek the intervention of Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Interior. And while his colleague at the Ministry of Interior have been gracious, and on many occasions the Bunge football team is allowed to play at the police stadium, we have never received such reciprocated support from the military. Yet I know they have very good playing facilities along Langata Road. Will the minister at least be gracious enough to permit, because he served here and he understands the importance of those games to members, to at least give an undertaking and find ways of helping us. He can choose to respond directly here or later, Madam Speaker, because it's not something extremely related to the country, but to us now as parliamentarians.
Honorable CS.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And if you allow me, at least I can go on record that the leader of majority, I campaigned for him in his election, first when he came to Senate. And he is one of the few leaders who grew on the ladder very fast. So he must be a very blessed man. And he has done his job very well. I think that on the Ulinzi Sports Complex, Madam Speaker, him or the Speaker just needs to write to us. Military installations, Madam Speaker, you don't just walk in. And that stadium, is next to one of our biggest garrison, Langata Barracks. But Parliament is very key. It's a very good facility, one of the best facilities, and I'll urge even senators. Early in the morning, you can even use the track to run, to play. And there are many other corporates who go to. So Parliament and the Senate is one of the best institutions. So, leader, we are ready, and we will avail that. And on Lamu, because I don't want to go into the operational, but the number of terror attacks that we foil every day, the country will be shocked. We are doing whatever it takes. We will not spare any resources. We will not spare any human capital to make sure, under the direction of our Commander-in-Chief, we will make sure for him and for the country to grow, to get the right economic growth and development. Security is a top priority of this administration.
Thank you, Honorable CS. I'm sure the senators will applaud you for that indulgence on the stadium, use of stadium. Senator David Wakoli, Wafula.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii na kushukuru waziri kwa majibu ambayo ameweza kutupa. Langu tu ni kuuliza kwa mustakabali na wajibikaji wa serikali na mawaziri katika baraza la mawaziri, ni yapi ambayo mlizingatia kuafiki kwamba askari wa nchi ya Kenya watapelekwa kule Haiti na sio jeshi la nchi ya Kenya? Na pili, ni mfumo ama kanuni ama sheria ipi mtakayoitumia kuwachagua ama kuwapata vikosi vya vijana wetu shupavu ambao wataenda kuhudumia nchi hii katika nchi ya kigeni kuhakikisha kwamba malengo ya bara na malengo ya kimataifa yanafikiwa. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honorable CS.
Madam Speaker, that's a very good question, but I think IG Kome and Professor Kindiki should be here to answer that question. At least the Security Council has approved, and I think now Parliament has a role, so I think with my very good governor, and congratulations, Governor who replaced my leader and friend, the Speaker of the National Assembly. It's a very good question. I think now you can file a question, now that the Security Council has approved, you can file a question that what are the mechanisms and the procedures. But I don't want to take the responsibility of my colleague, Minister for Interior. I humbly request that.
Senator Karungu Tangwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, the CS is referring to my colleague here as the governor. He is a senator for Bungoma, but maybe he has a vision. My question, Honorable CS, last week the whole Senate was in Turkana for what we call Senate Mashinani. And when we got there, we are able to visit different areas and listen to the people. I'm not a member of the Agricultural Committee, but I joined them in their trip to Katilu irrigation scheme. And when we went there to see the first intake from the River Takwel, we were accompanied by an entourage of police officers. And we were told that's where the neighbors from Pokot come in and attack the people of Turkana, and vice versa. And when we were listening to the people, they said, Mr. Speaker, that if only KDF was to be stationed there to serve as a buffer zone between the Pokot and the Turkana. And when they go there, and I'm really happy when you say that you're going to integrate them in the community project and all that, and when they go there, they don't go as a camp. They get land. They use that land for irrigation, because that area, Mr. Speaker, they're capable of irrigating about 2 million acres, but they only have 2,000 acres of irrigation. So probably we can also use our KDF to, one, provide security, and also be part of fighting or providing food security in this country. If they were put there as a buffer zones between Pokot and Turkana, and they have so many acres of land where they can as well use the local communities to cultivate that land, such that when you want to go to Turkana from Pokot, you have to go through the KDF camp, now the farm, or vice versa. They were giving that suggestion, if it is possible, wherever we have conflict between, and I don't know why, Mr. Speaker, I had time to reflect. And I think as a nation, we need to think about what we need to do for the neighbors, because we realize Turkana are complaining of Pokot. Laikipia, they're complaining of Pokot. Samburu are complaining the same. So I think something needs to be done. I don't know whether it's the Pokot or the other communities. So I need something also need to be done. But my question was creation of a buffer zone. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to answer the great Senator of Kiambu, sorry, I was saying Senator of Bungoma, is that there are a number of fundamentals. Number one, you only talk to the Turkanas. So I think next time you talk to the Pokots, then next time you talk to the Samburus, you talk to the people in Laikipia, you talk to the people of Samburu, Baringo, the whole of that ecosystem, because everybody has his story to tell. But I don't think Kenya Defense Forces should create buffer zone between communities. Our buffer zones should be our borders, the air, the land, and the sea. We protect our country. In this area where you went, don't worry. We will deal with the Turkana criminals, we will deal with the Pokot criminals, we will deal with Samburu criminals, we will deal with the Elgeyo Marakwet criminals, we will deal with the Tiati and the Baringo criminals. And now we have dealt with them. They have felt the weight of Kenya Defense Forces and other multi-agency team. And they know this administration, they have to choose something else to do. Their historical business of cattle rustling and killing and closing and maiming women and children, it will not happen under President William Ruto as the Commander-in-Chief. So it's good you have had it. We have a number of small FOBs in those areas. Today, if you go to the bridge called Koloa Bridge, taught in Elgeyo Marakwet and Baringo, communities are going through and everything is going well. So rest be assured, the way your people are dealing with the changa brewers and drug dealers in other parts of the country and criminals and wash, the way Interior is dealing with the story of bandits and criminals in the North Rift and northern part of Kenya will be a thing of the past.
Thank you, Honorable CS, for that particular response. Senator from Turkana, Senator Lomenen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. First and foremost, I want to thank the CS Duale. He's my friend, a close friend, but I've missed him in this chamber for so long because I've been having several questions for him, but I know he has been so busy. Maybe to go straight, when a speaker, Turkana is 77,000 kilometers square. It borders Ethiopia at the area of Kibich. It borders southern Sudan at Nadapal. It also borders Uganda at the border of Lotere. And then something that is so unique that an CS is supposed to know, Pokots are dual citizen. They fought both in they fought both in Kenya and they fought both in Uganda. So how do you treat them? When they raid or they ambush the Kenyans, Turkana Kenyans who are in Kenya, they hide themselves, they hide weapons in Uganda. As we talk now, Mr. CS, through the speaker, the KDF is not located in Uganda. I'm sure also it is not located in Ethiopia. It's only located in southern Sudan, that is Nadapal. So, but my observation that those who are there are very few. So, our citizens from Loima or Turkana County have been mostly embarrassed by the UDF in Uganda. As even we talk now, there are people who are imprisoned just because of taking their livestock to Uganda. And you know it very well, there is that East Africa treaty which we signed. And our citizens, our partner states like Kenya, are supposed to enjoy this grazing and water. As we talk now, they are not supposed to step there in every means they will use. So the livestock and the people are suffering now at the area called Logriama. So, Mr. Speaker, I will need clarification from the CS responsible why the KDF is not in Uganda, is not also in Ethiopia. And then my colleague Senate said between Uganda, between West Pokot and Uganda. You should not treat West Pokot as only Kenyans. They are external, they fought both in Uganda and Kenya. So when they do something, you don't treat them that as Kenyans. You treat them differently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS, could you respond to Senator from Turkana?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senator for Turkana was my friend and old colleague in the National Assembly. And now I'm happy we had, and I want to apologize here today that we had sometimes very unkind words with him on the Senate. Little did he know that he will come and sit in the Senate. Little did I know that I will come and answer questions before the Senate. I think for me, this is how the world is around about. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to apologize for the very many unkind remarks I made against the Senate when I was in the National Assembly. But number one, Honorable Senator, I can only speak for Pokots who are Kenyans. That's number one. Number two, I agree with you, and I want to thank the county government and the leadership of Turkana. Now we have enough bases in Turkana County, which we are going to build, including our Air Force in Lodwar town. All these are geared to make sure that our people and our country is safe from any incursion from our neighbors. We have a very good diplomatic relation with Uganda, with Ethiopia, with South Sudan. And these are governments that we deal with every day to solve if there are any issues concerning our people. But on the insecurity and cattle rustling, we have agreed with the Ugandan People's Defense Forces that they will deal with the banditry on their side, and we deal on banditry on our side. That's why I'm saying bandits have no choice. They have nowhere to hide. They can't cross, whether they're Turkanas or even though I don't want to brand criminals, any community. They are criminals. Criminals have no place to hide, even across the borders, to Sudan, to Ethiopia. We are talking to those government and those colleagues. And I want to assure you that there will be bases in all those three borders. Already we have the one with South Sudan. We are going to increase. We have even brought the Air Force to Lodwar Airport. So we will increase, and that's why we are moving from the central area of Kenya and go to the borders to safeguard our people, including the great people of Turkana.
Thank you. CS Senator Hazena, you had made initially a request. Seems you've... Senator Hazena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I had wanted to ask the Honorable CS and our northern leader that about why they cannot deploy people who understand the terrain well, especially the local, into these regions as one of the ways to curb insecurity and deal with these bandits. Thank you. Because I think Samburus understand their territory very well. The Turkana understand their territory well. So they are the best people to bring peace among themselves. Thank you.
Honorable CS.
Madam Speaker, I had an incident in West Pokot. In Elgeyo, and Minister Murkomen and the leaders were with me. In Kenyan Defense Forces, we don't have communities. We don't have Turkanas, we don't have Samburus. We have Kenya Defense Forces under the leadership of the Commander-in-Chief. So I think that story I used to hear when I was a member of parliament, where you say, remove this OCS because he comes from that community. That doesn't work in Kenya Defense Forces. They are Kenyans, and they know all the terrain. So it's not only Samburus who will know. We have got very good officers, Samburu. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the Major General in charge of training, policy, and operations at Kenya Defense Headquarters is from Samburu. A very decorated, respectable general. But he is a Kenyan general. so he can go anywhere. So I want to assure my sister, our senator, that don't worry. Every officer in the file and rank of Kenya Defense Forces knows the terrain and they are Kenyans. And we don't want to discriminate them. We want them to work any part of our country and any part of our region, both East Africa and the Horn of Africa.
Thank you, Honorable CS. I think, Honorable Members, that brings us to the close of the questions to the Honorable CS, whom I must appreciate for his, if I must appreciate the CS for his vast knowledge and commitment to the ministry, and also to confirm to him that you apologize to the House for advisedly apologizing for the comments you made previously in the other House, that the apology is accepted, and acknowledge the fact that you have committed to honor and respect the House of Parliament, both this one and also the National Assembly. And welcome you once again to answer the questions. I know there are so many questions honorable members would want to ask. I know there are so many other supplementary concerns and questions they would have wanted to ask, but because you have taken your time within today to respond to this one, we will welcome you once again in another session, and we will look forward to also get to know more of your responses in terms of what is relevant to your ministry. With that, Honorable CS, you are discharged with appreciation from the Chair and from the House. Honorable members, we need to call the next order of business. Clerk.
Order number 8, the County Government's Additional Allocations Bill, National Assembly Bills number 23 of 2023, second reading.
Honorable members, this is the bill that we had yesterday. I think we adjourned the House when Senator Mandago was on the floor, and he had 17 minutes remaining for him to conclude on his response to support the bill that was moved yesterday by the majority whip. Senator Mandago was just here in a moment. Senator Mandago, you had 17 minutes remaining of your time. I do not know whether you are ready to proceed.
Yes, I'm ready.
Take the mic.
Honorable Speaker, as I had stated yesterday before my time was up, that I do support this motion of additional allocation bills to county governments. Honorable Speaker, in supporting this motion, this is going to add additional close to 56 billion Kenya shillings to counties. And Honorable Speaker, this is going to aid our counties in making sure that services are delivered to citizens. But Honorable Speaker, I had reservations in some of the programs, and I wanted to concur with Senator Mungatano of Tana River that, Honorable Speaker, there are programs that are designed and conceptualized from ministries, Honorable Speaker. And in most of the times, Honorable Speaker, you find that those programs that have been designed and conceptualized from ministries are designed in a manner that befits the geographical location where the cabinet secretary comes from. And you find a program costing 12 billion, 15 billion, 20 billion being designed for 3, 5, or 8 counties, as opposed to putting into consideration equity that we are supposed to guarantee for all the counties, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, even as we support this motion, Honorable Speaker, going forward it would be prudent that some of those programs are reviewed to make sure that there is equity, to make sure that it covers all populations in the country without discriminating. Otherwise, Honorable Speaker, it will mean if you are from a county where the cabinet secretary does not come from that geographical region, you will be here supporting additional allocation, but the allocations will be skewed towards particular regions. I agree with my brother, Senator Mungatana, that indeed there is need for review of the planning and budgeting processes at the National Treasury. It cannot be that a county will benefit from 8 programs conceptualized by national government and other counties get 0 or only get a portion of one of the programs. The work of this House is to protect devolution, to ensure there is equity. And the principal purpose of devolution in its inception was actually to deal with marginalization, deliberate marginalization of some regions, to make sure that there is equity and that this country is developed across the nation in a fair and an equitable manner, so that lives of Kenyans, no matter which corner you come from, is equally improved and we have fair living standards. Honorable Speaker, we were in Turkana for Senate Mashinani, and I know my colleagues in other committees have painted the performance of Turkana otherwise. But I would want to also challenge and say, for counties that were privileged before devolution, probably like Uasin Gishu, Honorable Speaker, my own county, we had tarmac in places like Nyeri where there are provincial headquarters, in Mombasa, in Nairobi here. They will never understand where devolution has brought some of those counties. And that is why we are keen on making sure that these allocations are equitable. Turkana County, Honorable Speaker, before devolution, people must understand that in the 66,000 square kilometers of Turkana, we had only 2 hospitals. That is, the hospitals, 77,000 kilometers square, Honorable Speaker. We had only 2 hospitals, one in Lodwar town and the other one in Lokichokyo. Some of these senators don't understand that to travel from Lodwar, the county headquarters of Turkana, to go to the farthest border, the border of Turkana and Ethiopia, you travel another 500 kilometers and there is no road, Honorable Speaker. And today, as we speak, Honorable Speaker, we have an hospital, a ward hospital, in all the 30 wards of Turkana County, Honorable Speaker. And I therefore want to urge my colleagues that whenever we visit counties, just that seeing a structure or visiting a place is not sufficient to make conclusions and cast aspersions on county performance until you get proper documentation and even the report of the Auditor General. And I therefore want to say, Honorable Speaker, that these funds need equity and needs to be properly protected. Honorable Speaker, even as we pass this additional allocation, we have had very successful programs at county levels that are donor-driven, like the Kenya Urban Support Program, the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Programs, that as a Senate, Honorable Speaker, we shall need to further make these funds ring-fence for particular activities, Honorable Speaker. And in this sense, Honorable Speaker, since these are additional allocation, we don't expect that these funds will be used for recurrent expenses that are not related to development budget, Honorable Speaker. And I say recurrent expenses, not related development expenditure, Honorable Speaker, because there is a general misconception in terms of accounting that all the funds in counties classified as recurrent expenditure are actually wasteful expenditure. And that's why I've always called for the Kenya Accounting Standards Board to review the classification of accounts, government accounts in this country, because they are recurrent expenditure that are development in nature. And Honorable Speaker, for example, if you are running a county, the procurement of drugs, non-pharmaceuticals, training, fuel for county-owned machines for grading a road, all those funds are treated as recurrent expenditure. But those are not wasteful expenditure, and that's why I say there is need for a classification. And even as these funds go down to counties, we need to make them specific and should not be used for any recurrent expenditure that is not development related. Honorable Speaker, when we do that, we shall realize quicker development, more services to the citizens of our counties, because then this will be tailor-made to answer specific problems that counties are going through. If you go to the Kenya Urban Support Program, Honorable Speaker, for example, you would see that most urban centers in this country, most county headquarters roads in this county were actually greatly improved when the Kenya Urban Support Program was running. And that money was strictly designed for improvement of infrastructure around the county headquarters and the major urban centers in our various counties, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, even as I contribute this motion, my own county, Uasin Gishu, will be receiving an additional 1 billion shillings. We would want to see an increase in service delivery following this new allocation. The additional allocation, Honorable Speaker, therefore confirms that there are still more resources at the national government level that are meant for devolved function that are still being held at the national government. As a Senate, therefore, this is one route that we should take to make sure we increase allocation to counties, even for functions that are shared or concurrent between county and national government. I hope, Honorable Speaker, as we continue with this conditional allocation, we shall also review other funds that have been set aside under this conditional allocation, like the managed equipment, which I still believe, Honorable Speaker, counties are yet to get value for money for the equipment that was paid for. And I want to be on record, Honorable Speaker, to say those contractors who are contracted on the managed equipment, Honorable Speaker, they will not rest until they make sure they supply all the equipment that they are signed a contract to supply to our counties. I would suggest further, Honorable Speaker, that if there is any allegation that a county was not ready to receive those equipment and has been paid for, those equipment should be supplied, taken to Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Health should donate to any county or national facility that is ready for use. But there is no way suppliers will go away with Kenya funds without supplying. It is equivalent to paying for oxygen, Honorable Speaker, that you cannot have a field, you didn't manufacture, you didn't supply, it was not inspected and received, and funds have been paid. Finally, on the allocation for maintenance, the 5.8 billion under the managed equipment, I would urge the Ministry of Health that even as there is need to maintain those equipments, then the cost of maintenance of equipment that was not supplied should be deducted from that overall figure. Therefore, the cost of that contract should be anything less than the 5.8 billion, because you cannot service what you never supplied. And it cannot be that that figure is just based on the overall expectation that the supplier was supposed to deliver all these equipments. They failed to deliver part of the equipment, and they are paid again the total sum figure for maintenance of those equipment, Honorable Speaker. That will be unfair to the citizens of this country, and we would expect the Ministry of Health to make sure that they are only paying for services that have been consumed. Otherwise, I still agree with the framers and the designers of the program that the managed equipment was and is still a good program. It needs to be properly re-engineered and made to provide for value for money for whatever we are doing. Honorable Speaker, part of the funds that are going as additional allocation is a grant from DANIDA. And Honorable Speaker, the grant from DANIDA that has been supporting our facilities is a very good example of a fund or a grant that has helped improve health in counties. This is the first program that supported facilities direct at the facility level, that counties were required to receive the money and send to the health facilities, so that any shortcomings of budgetary provisions from the county would then be catered for these funds. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank this Honorable House for passing the Facility Improvement Financing Bill, because that is going to revolutionize health management and empower the community and the committee and the facility to be able to discharge services to wananchi, so that when the universal health coverage package is rolled out, the facilities are adequately prepared now that we have legislation, and we are encouraging national government and other development partners that they can now send funds directly to our facilities, so that the decision making and the time it takes to turn around on provision of non-farms, pharmaceuticals, or any other things that need to be procured, funds are available at the facility, and citizens will no longer go to any facility and be referred to go to any other facility other than where necessary to have a referral. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I would want to ask that the National Treasury then, once this bill is passed, actually expedite the disbursement. And I have no doubt in my mind, looking at the demonstration and the commitment of the national government in releasing funds to counties. I have said before that those who are serving as county governors now are the most fortunate governors, since they have timely release of resources. I'm sure this additional allocation will also be timely released, so that counties will be able to utilize, and no businessmen, suppliers of service or goods will then have to lose their businesses. No Kenyans will have to lose their jobs on account of businesses have been closed. But in the end, those who are doing business and those who are receiving service will have a reason to celebrate this administration. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mandagwa. Senator Karungo Tangwa, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, it is the bill, the County Government Additional Allocations, Bill 2023. Mr. Speaker, Kiambu County is receiving an additional allocation of 1.2 billion. That is 2% of the whole additional allocation, which is 56 billion, that is going to all the counties, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that we are working so hard as a Senate to make sure that these monies are channeled to the counties that we represent. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza administration is giving out this money timely without being late even with a day, Mr. Speaker. Every 15th of every month, every county is receiving their share. I can give you an example. Kiambu County, July 15th, it received 1 billion. August 15th, it received 978 million. September 15th, it received 1 billion. And within the next 12 days, Mr. Speaker, actually 11 days, Kiambu County will receive another 978 million. That is what we had passed previously. But today, we are coming to pass and approve this bill to make sure Kiambu gets an additional allocation of 1.2 billion. Mr. Speaker, I think as a Senate, now that we have done our part to make sure the counties get their monies, I think we need to take this a notch higher. Because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot be working very hard as a Senate to send monies to the counties, yet the governors are not able to utilize the monies that we send to the counties. They are unable to commit. And I can tell you here, without blinking, Mr. Speaker, that the county government of Kiambu, in the close of the financial year of 2022-2023, they were unable to spend 3 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. 3 billion disappeared. We were unable to commit. The governor was unable to spend it, and yet he had pending bills of 5.2 billion. Mr. Speaker, I think if that is not incompetence, I don't know what we can call that, Mr. Speaker. We should take it as a Senate. If you are unable to spend the monies that have been sent to you, we calculate that and we say that is incompetence, Mr. Speaker. Because if you are not able to work, yet we are sending the monies to the counties. Some counties are crying that they do not have enough monies. But here we are working very hard to send monies to the counties, only for the governors not be able to spend that amount, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm really happy that within this additional allocation, I've seen 250 million Kenya shillings going for the county aggregated industrial park, because I was beginning to worry why we do not have one in Kiambu County. Because, you know, it was launched in Busia, Kakamega, Bungoma, Mombasa, you know, Narok, all the Azmio, you know, governors' areas. And I was wondering, is it that the governors from my side of Kenya Kwanza are not embracing this, or what is happening, Mr. Speaker? But at least we see there is money for the county aggregated industrial park for Kiambu. So there is no reason that the CS for trade should not come to Kiambu very soon and launch this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, out of 1.2 billion, 160 million is for fertilizer subsidy. Kiambu is an agricultural zone, Mr. Speaker. And as we await these monies, Mr. Speaker, we would want to urge the county government to come up with a good structure of giving out this fertilizer, Mr. Speaker. Some of them are using this fertilizer as a campaign tool, giving somebody who does not even have land a bag of fertilizer. They can only put fertilizer on their flowers that are just in their corridors because they do not have land. So I think the county government should come clear and come out with a very nice framework to make sure that this fertilizer gets to those who deserve. That is the coffee farmers, you know, any other crop, tea, and all that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the second schedule of the bill, the counties are receiving money from the court fines. You know, if you break the county legislation, you're taken to court, whatever fine you're fined from breaking a county legislation, that money is reverted back to that county. And I can tell that Kiambu is receiving 5 million from court fines, of which I would want to caution my people not to just to adhere with the county laws. I mean, this is not something that I would be really happy to know that my people are being fined so that this money can go now and channel development. I can tell my people to follow the laws of the counties. But I have noted, Mr. Speaker, other counties who are receiving bigger allocation from the court fines are Mombasa is receiving 13 million, Machakos is receiving 14 million, and Nairobi County is receiving 70 million. The question, Mr. Speaker, is it that the people of Nairobi break the law more than other counties? Or is it other people from other counties who are not accustomed to the county legislation, when they come here, they are fined? I think this is something the devolution committee should check to see whether we have the best county legislation in the county of Nairobi and other counties, so that you know, our people, the economic times are not so good, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't fine our people just like that. Mr. Speaker, the Kiambu County is receiving 500 million, that is $500 million, from the development partners, that is World Bank. And this is going to so many different projects. But I have an interest in one called NARIG, Mr. Speaker. NARIG is giving Kiambu 150 million. The reason why I'm bringing this issue, Mr. Speaker, and that's what I'm saying, if governors are unable to use these funds to where they're supposed to be used, I think we should mark that as a sign of incompetence. Kiambu was about to lose 114 million Kenya shillings from the previous financial year because the county government or the executive was unable to procure some machinery, ESP machinery, for Limuru Dairy in Kiambu County that the World Bank had given that county almost 2 years ago. Because of procurement issues and the need that somebody need kickback, they were taken round and round. And Mr. Speaker, if it were not for my intervention and the intervention of the Member of Parliament for Limuru, Kiambu County could have lost this amount. And the intervention that was done, Mr. Speaker, is to write to World Bank to channel this money direct to the Limuru Dairy, Mr. Speaker, because the county government is unable to provide such needed equipment for Limuru Dairy that is serving about 200,000 farmers. Not just Limuru, Gatundu, Kabete, even Githunguri, where I come from, Mr. Speaker. So right now we have another 150 million. I would want to urge the governor of Kiambu County and his government to use this money. We are working very hard. As a senator of Kiambu, I'm working very hard to make sure that this money goes to the county. But if this money cannot be spent, if this money cannot be used the way it's supposed to be used, then I believe someone is sleeping on the job, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fourth schedule is additional conditional grants. And Kiambu is benefiting from 149 million of livestock value chain support, Mr. Speaker. I believe we have no reason not to work for the people of Kenya, not to work for the people of Kiambu. I have to speak on behalf of the people of Kiambu, because the monies are at the county. And it is a high time, and I know you will support me or agree with me, Mr. Speaker, when I say we even need to disorganize the way we oversight governors. Governors come to CPAC committee, and we have to wait for audited report. With the oversight function, Mr. Speaker, we don't have to be waiting for the auditor's report. The report I'm giving now is enough to make CPAC invite a governor. I mean, we don't have to wait for governor to mismanage a county, then we question him a year later. Today we are questioning governors of the previous governors. So if we do have a proper CPAC committee that are regional, why am I saying regional? Why am I saying regional? I do understand the problem of Kiambu County. I have a lot of respect with the chair for CPAC, who is Kajwang, who is a friend of my governor. They were together here. I'm not saying anything, Mr. Speaker, but what I'm saying is, if that committee, Mr. Speaker, had chairs from Mount Kenya, it was chaired by the senators from Mount Kenya who are in that committee, like 5 or 6 of us, we will be able to understand we are not only fighting for our neighbors, we are also fighting for ourselves, Mr. Speaker. Because I cannot feel comfortable having a senator from far away. We were asking a question here, why we are taking police to Haiti. How many thousand kilometers, Senator Kalwale? 12,000 kilometers. We are questioning that. Yet I'm tasking a senator who is 7,000 kilometers from me to take care of my county. Mr. Speaker, I believe it's a high time we check on our standing orders to make sure that I'm given an opportunity to oversight my county. It is sad to see money going back to the coffers, and the governance not working, and I have to wait for a whole year to ask a question that I could have asked when it happens, because we see it. We are seeing it happening, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these monies that are going to the county, most of them are for development and, of course, recurrency, and there will be money that will go to the health facilities, Mr. Speaker. I asked here on this floor, or on the floor of this House, on a statement, on an issue where the employees of county government were, their insurance scheme, which was NHIF, was withdrawn and they were taken to a private entity. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about universal health care here. The government is providing the best in NHIF, but here you have a governor who wants to get out from the NHIF and go to a private entity. Your guess is as good as mine why he would do that. But when I bring that statement here, Mr. Speaker, It is months. The governor has not been summoned. We have not received any response. And here I am, Mr. Speaker, and that's what I'm saying. We need to form oversight committees or CPAC or CPIC that are regional so that we can fight for our people collectively, Mr. Speaker. Because if today I have not received any information 1 year down the line, what does that tell us? And here we are sending money to the counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most World Bank grants and loans are project-based. They don't send money blindly. And that's why sometimes you see projects that are funded by World Bank are paid on time and are done thoroughly. So I would urge, whenever the National Treasury is bringing this bill, to be bringing the itemized projects that World Bank is going to do in my county. So that when they say they're giving 150 million for NARIG, I should be told this and this and this will happen. So that we start following our governors, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I talked about Kiambu County owes contractors and others over 5 billion as pending bills. And I use this opportunity because I'm working on an amendment of PFM that will help cure the issue of pending bill, Mr. Speaker. Do you know why we have pending bills? Because when governors are passing their budgets, they overproject their own source revenue. In the year 2022-2023, Kiambu said they will collect 3 billion, but they collected 2.1. So there is a deficit. Yet they had already earmarked and committed the 3 billion. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine today as we speak, the current budget of Kiambu County, 2023-2024, they projected their own source revenue to 7 billion. Mr. Speaker, if you could not collect 3 billion, now you're saying you are going to collect 7 billion. So what will happen? They are going to overcommit this 7 billion in projects, and then they collect 3 billion. So another deficit of 4 billion plus the previous 5 billion, that's 10 billion. Maybe the incoming governor in 2027 will not work. He will just pay pending bills, Mr. Speaker. So that's why I want to bring that amendment on this House, so that when you're overprojecting your own source revenue, Mr. Speaker, you can only do so to a certain percentage of the previous collection. If Kiambu had collected 2 billion, you can only overproject maybe 20% higher. So it is 2 billion plus 200 million. That way, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to make sure that the counties are transparent. And if at all you collect more, you can always do a supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker. So I think this is the time, as a Senate, we stand with each other. And just so you know, just the way you are a senator of your county representing the interests of your county, hear me out. Hear me out because my county is burning, Mr. Speaker. Hear me out because we are losing money in Kiambu County. Assist me, Mr. Speaker. Assist me to make sure that our people of Kiambu County, they are well represented. Their money are prudently used to make sure that they are assisted, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, we'll be coming here every day just because somebody have a few friends. And you know, Senator Senator Chimera was bringing a bill here to say previous or former governors should not run for Senate. I think you should add a clause in it. Even those governors who are friends in the Senate should also try. Because you see, some of them are being protected by their friends in this House, Mr. Speaker. And it is a high time we listen to one another and fight for our counties, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, I hate to interrupt my young colleague, but did you hear him say that there are senators here who are protecting governors who are corrupt? I raise understanding order number 105 for him to substantiate, because I'm definitely not one of those senators, Mr. Speaker, protecting crooked, thieving, stealing governors. that he now will have to substantiate, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Karungu Thangwa, kindly substantiate on that particular allegation. It's a grave one for that matter, particularly with regards to members who are sitting in this House.
Mr. Speaker, I think there's an English saying that says, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. Why am I saying that, Mr. Speaker? My county governor was supposed to appear at the CPAC committee by March last year. It was extended to July. No, March this year, sorry. March this year. It was extended to July. Then it has been extended to this month. So we don't know whether there will be another extension, Mr. Speaker. So that's what I'm saying, because I don't believe, and I do not want to insinuate anything, Mr. Speaker, but I would urge, let's help the people of Kiambu, because I wouldn't want my governor to be brought here the way the people of Meru brought Kawera, because I know his file is not as good.
Senator Thangwa, do you want to be informed by Senator Sotsi?
Yeah, he's my chair, CPIC. You can inform me.
Very well, Senator Sotsi, proceed.
Speaker, my good friend, Senator for Kiambu, knows the problem that we have with his governor appearing before Accountability Committee. He's a distinguished member of my committee, CPIC, and we have a similar problem with the governor of Kiambu appearing before us. We had to postpone 3 times because, one, documents were not in a prescribed format, and we got to a point we had to summon him to appear before us. So I just wanted to inform the senator that there is something particularly wrong with the governor of Kiambu.
Senator Thangwa, could you conclude on your substantiating the issue as was raised by Senator Boni? I have not given you the mic. I have not given you the mic, yes.
Thank you very much.
Senator Thangwa.
Kalala wanted to inform me? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude. And thank you, Chair, because...
you have an intervention, Boni Halwale? What is your intervention?
Mr. Speaker, thanks for your indulgence. The issue raised by the chair of CPAC and by the Senator of Kiambu, who also sits in CPAC, is monumental. They need to make a formal submission to the House, Mr. Speaker, so that this House assists them. I remember in the 11th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, the former governor of Kakamega applied the same tactics and never appeared before this House. Thank God now, his file has now been handed over to DCI. It was handed over by EACC yesterday. Let's not wait for the people of Kiambu to lose money only for 10 years later for us to start doing postmortems. Could this Senate afford CPAC an opportunity to prosecute the governor of Kiambu if indeed he's doing these things?
I believe what the chairperson of the committee was saying when he made specific reference to a particular problem, they must have a solution to that effect. I do not know, but you take the cue from the comments by Senator Boni Halwale and also what has been raised by Senator from Kiambu. Could you, as you conclude on your comment, Senator, comment on that as well?
Thank you very much, Chair. And I really thank my chair, CPIC, because he's a very able chairperson, and always we discuss these issues. And he understands how angry sometimes I become at the committee. He actually was about to fine my governor 500,000 for skipping a sitting. It took my indulgence to implore to the chair not to fine my governor 500,000 because I believed you give them a chance. But if somebody is not learning, Mr. Speaker, that's why Senator Kalwale is saying it is time to crack the whip and invite them governors. If we have to change our standing orders to have governors come and stand here, just the way the CSs are standing, we can do that, Mr. Speaker. Actually, that one is more important than anything. To have a governor here, we should not only wait when they are impeached or removed. But as I conclude, I would want to urge my governor, work with the people, and I wouldn't want him to go through the Kawera way when he was brought here, because I cannot guarantee his return. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader, Senator Aaron Cheriot.
Thank you. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance to also contribute to the county government's additional allocation bill number 2023. This is a very important bill, Mr. Speaker. Important in the sense that this bill is a child of the Senate. I say so, Mr. Speaker, because those that have served long enough in the Budget and Finance Committee know that before there was even something called condition and unconditional grant, Mr. Speaker, many county governments would additionally receive resources through various schemes and policies of the national government without due regard to any procedure, reference to any committee of the Senate. And therefore, at Budget and Finance Committee, Mr. Speaker, we began to raise concerns about the increasing number of allocations that were being sent to county governments. Small amounts as they began, 2 billion, 3 billion. But subsequently, when we realized the figures were growing over and above tens of billions, then as Senate we raised concerns about the need to have a formula and establish mechanism through which any additional funds that goes to our counties are determined, and the assurance thereof that there is no system or systemic process in which other counties were being marginalized, Mr. Speaker. Because this House serves to protect the interests of counties and their governments. And therefore, after years of haggling about this conversation, Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Budget and Finance developed this mechanism. Number one, the formula through which first you make the determination of what is conditional, what is unconditional, and the spread out of how each county benefits. And the same will be evidence in the bill, Mr. Speaker. And if you read through the schedules, the first, second, third, you will see that counties, for example, that don't have minerals, or at least, I don't believe no county doesn't have minerals, Mr. Speaker, but counties that haven't exploited their mineral activities don't benefit, for example, under Schedule 3 in the mineral collections, and so on and so forth, Mr. Speaker. Many other things. I listened to the senator who contributed before me speak on the issue of fines and the same. So this bill is a brainchild of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, after rigorous work and thoughts of colleague senators on what we need to do, have a determined formula and ways in which you send additional resources to our counties, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I am happy and proud that this House has made a significant contribution in entrenching and furthering devolution as one of the great tenets why this House exists. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we have this bill that is before us that sets out the formula and the determination of all these proceeds of loans and grants and from development partners and other government programs, Mr. Speaker, that the national government is running in collaboration with the county government. I must commend this administration for one thing, Mr. Speaker. I hear people not appreciate and celebrate, but it has taken this administration, Mr. Speaker, to finally unlock the constitutional dictates of Article, should be 189 if I don't get it right, but on the cooperation between county and national governments, Mr. Speaker. Many of the times that there are programs that were being run, Mr. Speaker. The least medical equipment is one such example, and it's part of the funds that are on this schedule, Mr. Speaker, where decisions on procurement, allocation, determination of who deserves what, were all concluded here in Nairobi with minimal or no regard, Mr. Speaker, to our county governments. But take an example, take a look, Mr. Speaker, at, for example, this fertilizer subsidy program, Mr. Speaker, and the coordination and the agreement, putting it in schedule, matching Mr. Speaker, I hear many people sometimes argue and say, oh, we see so much resources sometimes remain at Ministry of Agriculture. If we continue the way this bill is structured, Mr. Speaker, then very soon such conversations will be things of the past, because much as you want to centralize certain things on policy, for example, Mr. Speaker, would it make sense, despite the fact that many people, especially our colleagues from the minority side, may not like to see any coin remain with the national government for obvious reasons, would it make sense, for example, Mr. Speaker, for each county to be left on their own to import their own fertilizer? Or you'd rather centralize it, have tests and standards, and determination of what is due? If you read through the schedule, Mr. Speaker, you will see that based on the 2019 census, each household, farming household unit per county is listed, and there is a weight to it. And that weight is the factor which informs how much bags of fertilizer are due to a particular county, and the resources follows the same, Mr. Speaker. Because if it was left to be procured otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it will be costly, for the simple reason of economies of scale. It makes more sense to place a more significant order. I mean, that's a no-brainer, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I like the spirit that is in the bill of cooperation between national and county governments where it makes sense, where it's more affordable, Mr. Speaker, where it actually gives better advantage to the people that we represent, Mr. Speaker, because sometimes we tend to blur the lines and forget that at the end of the day, there's only one taxpayer. And he doesn't have two pockets from which he pays, one to the county and another to the national government. When they pay taxes, they expect that us, especially we that serve in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, will have the financial discipline to determine for them what is in the best and most prudent way that they can get services closer to themselves, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I like the proposals that are in the bill, up to and including the reporting mechanisms that have been put in place. And this is a new model, Mr. Speaker, of drafting our bills, which I want members to take note and be cognizant of, especially you that serve in our committees. Many times you consider bills and we give a lot of responsibilities to cabinet secretaries without demanding that they come back to this house with a reporting mechanism on how they are executing those responsibilities that we've given unto them. I like, Mr. Speaker, that in this bill it is proposed and shall be the case that on the 15th of every month, this house will be furnished with reports, Mr. Speaker, of how much resources under this conditional or additional allocation, Mr. Speaker, have been sent to our counties. That's a very important tenet, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, there is a very good culture that is long lost in this house, which I want, and I have drafted a letter to the control of budget, because I feel as senators, we are not making the best use of that particular office. Previously, Mr. Speaker, when you went to the senator's lounge, you'd find many a times there was a huge pile of books about expenditure in our various counties and exchequer releases and whatnot, all those details that it will take for you as a senator to understand the financial operations of your own county government, Mr. Speaker. But that culture has since disappeared. Hardly do you ever find those books. Many colleagues, I'm sad to say, will struggle to tell you what was the last disbursement that went to their counties. Yet these are figures and statistics that will help you appreciate as a senator whether your governor is being prudent with the resources that you fight so hard to ensure that they go to our counties, Mr. Speaker. In fact, when we later interact with the controller of budget, and I want us to invite her to this house, Mr. Speaker, so that we take her to task on the various issues that are happening in our various counties, because you can actually control, Mr. Speaker, financial propriety in our counties, including who gets paid, for what services, at what time, using the offices of the controller of budget, Mr. Speaker, so that we are not just reduced to morticians, Mr. Speaker, of waiting for the results from the Auditor General at the end of a financial year to say, oh, what happened, this and the other. We want our reports promptly, and nothing stops her. In fact, when we eventually meet her, Mr. Speaker, we will demand that she does not even have to print those long, expensive copies. We are talking about austerity measures in our government, Mr. Speaker. Let us send even me that statement of Kericho County government operations to my WhatsApp. I have no business demanding that it be in hard copy. I'm the only senator of Kericho after all. So what is the problem? They know me, they know my number. Let me have that report in a prompt manner without any due consideration to so much protocols about government, so that I know how much is being released. How is it being spent? In fact, yesterday, Mr. Speaker, or 2 days ago, at the National Dialogue Committee, COG came and appeared before us, and I took them to task because I have another report which I'll be sharing with members in the next coming 1 or 2 weeks. Do you know, members, that all our 47 county governments are in violation of Schedule 25 of our regulations on expenditure in our county governments? There is not a single county that is spending more than 20% on development spend. All of them 15%, 16%, and we're just seated here as Senate. We must demand when control of budget comes here, because I have invited her and I've told her that you must appear before a committee of the whole for the entire Senate, because senators want to know, why are you allowing counties to spend over and above what is it called? Legislative determinations that have already been meant. The 70-30 principle. That principle was put there to ensure. We know very well that the easiest way with which you can pilfer resources is through recurrent expenditure. Because it's small things like fuel, printing, paying so and so, and all these funny programs that county governors are running. You find a governor running, with mattresses and whatnot, chicken, the way Senator Karunga was talking about, under recurrent vote, saying, I have brought this donation. That's why very few of them, actually, that's why none of them is at 35%. Very few are above 25%. Most of them, for your information, sadly, Senator, are below 20%. And this is a worrying trend which we must begin to question as Senate. We must demand from control of budget and ask, what is it that my county, Kericho, your county, Senator Osotsi, and the rest, Senator Betty, determine, and let your governor appear before us and file a recovery plan. Because I believe the reason why, for example, the national government is in the financial and debt distress that we find ourselves in as a country is because of managing our resources the way counties are beginning to operate. Where you imagine that so long as this is government, somehow money will always be found. You don't want to run it prudently, knowing that resources are finite, that somehow they must have an end. Senator Karungo Thango have just spoken about how many of our counties continuously inflate their own source revenue with the simple motivation of growing their development budget, so that at the end of it they can procure, take the 10% and never pay those contractors. There is absolutely nobody in their right mind right now, Mr. Speaker, in this country who can seek to be a county contractor unless the governor is your father, your mother, your boyfriend, or your girlfriend. Otherwise, any ordinary contractor knows the minute you conclude that job, you begin an even more difficult job of trying to get paid. And many of the times they'll never be paid. People have been auctioned. As a Senate, Mr. Speaker, these are the things that we need to interact with and rise above. I believe our job is not just legislating and passing laws and passing such beautiful pieces of legislation, Mr. Speaker. We must follow like a good CEO. And I said another time, Mr. Speaker, that a senator is like the chairman of a board and the governor is a CEO. Oversight responsibility is on us to ensure that your governor presents the financial report of how the company, otherwise known as a county government, performed in that particular financial year. How did they use the resources that were sent to them? How much did they ensure that they brought services proximate to the people, Mr. Speaker? Many other times, if you take time to read through, take time and understand, what is your governor doing? Where are these resources disappearing to? Why is it that when you move around your county, despondency levels are on an all-time high? People still speaking about lack of basic amenities, no drugs in our facilities. All the roads that were built between 2013 and now, none is being maintained, Mr. Speaker. And we will soon get to a point where our people will give up and say, we thought this was coming to save us. It is even worse than when things were centralized at the national government, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I hope at that session, when we interact, with the control of budget. And we will send a notice, Mr. Speaker, so that all the senators can appear during that particular meeting. In fact, my proposal, Mr. Speaker, is that let it be a committee of the whole so that we share our frustration and our disappointment with that particular office, including, Mr. Speaker, the difficulties why also many counties are not able to access their resources sometimes sent to them. Because I've listened to governors also sometimes who say that to access, the reason why many governors are able to access those resources in an easy manner is that they part with something. And those that don't give are frustrated and have to wait for months, and services are delaying, Mr. Speaker. And the minute they know that the minute you pay, then nobody asks you. It is a demand of us as a Senate that when a county government presents, for example, its list of suppliers and people to be paid for services that they have offered, that there shall be no alteration. And if there is to be an alteration, then it is with the authority of the control of budget. Therefore, I look forward to that particular meeting, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, I celebrate the spirit and the ingenuity that is in this particular bill and the various programs and proposals. Members take time to read, understand. We need to bring to a close, for example, this issue of the 5 counties that we began. Senator Boni Alwale was in the Senate, served with him in that particular committee when he allocated resources for 5 counties that were never district headquarters to go and build their county headquarters. He went on leave for good 5 years. He is back. We are still giving resources to those 5 counties. We need to bring this to a close, Mr. Speaker, and so many other programs that are listed here, because it doesn't make financial sense for us to continue to disperse the same, Mr. Speaker. And like I said lastly, Mr. Speaker, I like the fact that each segregated category points out you to your performance of your county. If you are not, I believe every part of this county, there is something they can mine. But if you have not exploited your mining potential, then don't expect anything on Schedule 3. That's why if you go to Schedule 3 and minerals, Mr. Speaker, of the bill, I think almost 20 counties, mine included, are on zero, because what can you be given if you have not brought or made any contribution? I expect maybe Kwale will be leading. I don't know, Mr. Speaker. Senator Chimera is here and will look it out for us and what has been the contribution because of the mining activities and so many others. Even Senator Boni, challenge your people. I saw yesterday in cabinet they allowed artisan miners to continue to ply their trade. You know those people who come with a karai and shake water and say, oh, there's some gold. I don't know how gold is called in Kiluya, Mr. Speaker. But we must move our people from that kind of mining practice and see what possibilities. I know they had closed actually the issue of issuing mining licenses. And I saw in the dispatch of cabinet yesterday that has now since been opened. I'm sure if Senator Boni Halwale was to exploit on that potential, there will be a bigger contribution to their column under Kakamega than what is on that column, and so on and so forth, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, and hope that we can conclude on it speedily so that these resources can be released to our counties. With those being remarks, Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Senate Majority Leader, for your contribution. I can confirm that the House will definitely support the requirement that you requested in the House of the Whole. Senator Osotsi Godfrey Atieno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also express my views on this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to say that this bill is a good bill, and I want to agree with the majority leader that one of the most fundamental things done by this Senate is to come up with this bill. Before that, Mr. Speaker, money used to be sent to the counties, additional allocations, without a proper legislative framework, and in most cases, the Senate did not know that money had been sent to our counties. But with the introduction of this bill, Mr. Speaker, we have been able to monitor all the monies that are sent to our counties outside the shareable revenue that we pass every year. Mr. Speaker, additional allocation has three components. That is a share of the national government, shareable revenue, loans from development partners, and grants. And these are the monies that are sent after we pass the shareable revenue that goes to the counties. And this is significant amounts of money, Mr. Speaker. I want to recommend, Mr. Speaker, that after this very important step that this Senate has done, I think the next aspect is how do we oversight the usage of this money. Mr. Speaker, I know my colleagues have talked about committee interventions, but I think it is a high time that Senate considered coming up with a special committee on accountability of additional allocation. I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, because I know PAC and PIC, they are quite busy with other aspects of accountability, but we need a special accountability committee on the issue of additional allocation, so that this committee will be there to look at how these monies are utilized, monitor projects on the ground, because this particular bill has come to us, Mr. Speaker, without the specific projects, especially for this donor money. It is important, and I want to agree with the Senator Kiambu, that maybe in the next bill that will come to us, we'd like to see if it is support in the agricultural sector, what are the specific projects that we are approving? Because when this money goes to the ground, Mr. Speaker, it is ends up in projects which sometimes are not there. They are hot air. So it is important that we have a special accountability committee on additional allocation, so that we enhance our oversight and ensure that all the funds that are sent to our counties outside the shareable revenue are equally monitored and properly oversighted. Mr. Speaker, I have gone through the bill. I have some reservation. I know that we are putting in money towards aggregated industrial park. And we have seen the CS for Trade, Honorable Moses Kuria, aggressively moving around the country and launching these parks. But Mr. Speaker, when you look at the schedule that has been provided, only 18 counties have been given the 250 million. My county is not included among the 18. The county of Kakamega, where my big brother Bonnie is a senator, has nothing. But we are seeing the CS is launching these things. On Friday, he's going to be in Vihiga, launching the industrial park. What is he launching when there is no money? When there is no budget? Mr. Speaker, I think it was important if we decided that we want to give 250 million to counties, we should have done that to all the counties. Or if we are not ready, we delay until next year to give them. But this idea of listing only 18 counties and leaving out the others, what criteria was used, Mr. Speaker? So I don't understand what the hurry that the CS for Trade is in by launching these things. In my own county, they are launching on Friday. There is no public participation. There is no intervention by the county assembly. So what is he coming to launch? And still on industrial park, the arrangement is that the national government gives 250 million and the county contributes 250 million. Mr. Speaker, many counties will have a problem raising this money. I know, like my county, we have budgetary issues. We may not be able to raise 250 million at a go. And it also requires the intervention and the approval by the county assembly. So I am seeing in this bill, Mr. Speaker, another 250 million shillings has been allocated to a donor fund called the National Agriculture Value Chain Development Project, 250. Basically, this is the money that is going towards supporting value chain initiative in our counties. I want to urge this Senate to be very careful, because some of the counties will end up using that 250 million shillings towards this industrial park project. But this money is basically meant to be used in those industrial parks for value addition, but not for capital expenditure. So that is an area that we need to notice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of royalties, mineral royalties, there is no clear criteria defined in this bill how these royalties were given. My county is getting 0. And yet I see a lot of mineral activities. We have, yes, we have artisans, but we also have big companies which are prospecting gold in our area, in Kakamega, in Vihiga, and some of them pretend they are prospecting, and yet they are actually mining. And we have ended up getting 0. Kakamega is getting only 16,000, surely. And there is a lot of gold activity happening there. And that's why I want to agree with Senator Mandago. We will not sit here and pass these things which are manipulated by relevant CSS to favor their region. If you look at the allocation of cost, the allocation of cost is almost a quarter of what has been allocated to the entire country. Yes, I know there is a lot of minerals in Kwale and Taita Taveta, but there is no justification of giving one county 3 billion shillings and giving 0 to Western. There is no justification. Mr. Speaker, where is this gold that is mined taken to? And how do you tell us that we have 0 royalties, Mr. Speaker? I think next time, Mr. Speaker, the committee that handles this bill must ask for the criteria that has been used to allocate this money. Mr. Speaker, I like the way the fertilizer subsidy allocation has been done. There is a criteria how they are allocating. We want the same to be applied to mineral royalties, and not just telling us that here is a schedule. There is no criteria that has been defined. Mr. Speaker, I have talked about the itemized projects, and I think my friend Karungo, Senator for Kiambu, has also alluded to this. I think it's important for us to know the projects that are being funded. We have this project called Narij. That is a cash cow. And every year we are giving money into that project. You go on the ground, there are no projects. And the members in this house, including myself, we have raised statements on this issue of Narij. And I think it's important for this Senate to have a proper inquiry on how these funds are utilized on the ground. Because some groups are fake, they even collude with county officials, they collude with the banks, and they draw money from these projects, and there is nothing on the ground, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senator of Kiambu has talked about timely disbursement of funds. I want to agree that this regime has been able to ensure that the money has been sent to our counties before the conclusion of the year. But, Mr. Speaker, practically, that money does not reach the counties in time because of the bureaucracies at the Office of the Controller of Budget, at the Treasury, IFMIS. So you find that 2 months later, counties are still chasing that money. So I want to agree with the majority leader that I think it's a high time that this House had a serious engagement with the Controller of Budget, because a lot of things are happening at that office.
Senator Osotsi, it is 1 o'clock. You will have an additional 8 minutes to continue the contribution when you resume in the afternoon. And Honorable Senators, it's now 1 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. This House, therefore, stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, 4th October, 2023, at 2:30 p.m.
Naam, mtazamaji, kimekuwa kikao cha asubuhi